So schedule, I already put that, not to forget about it. Status, status, demos. We have Sergio, I have some. So I put OC just to try to get used to it, because Daniel has been using that acronym a few times already. Orchard Core. I used to say O2, now it's Orchard Core, so it's OC. That's kind of hard to get to it, but that's fine. I will get used to it. Topics, what do we have? Maybe a word on harvest. There is nothing new, but if there are questions, I know Daniel has asked some questions from the speaker side. Harvest, schedule, might talk about it. Status, other topics, other demos. Am I a speaker? Nick, you're always a speaker. You should know. You even have your name on the speaker list, so I assume you're a speaker. orchardharvest.org. Nick is here. What is Orchard Core SaaS framework? That's you.
I should probably make it work.
Yeah, a little. You don't have to make everything to work. It's just about, yeah. We can.
Taylor's there. I can get someone useful from the MVC team to help me.
So status. Orchard 1. I've seen some activity from Lombic, but not much. We did some merges during last triage. So let's see, 4 days. Juliana Alazorza. Is that a friend of you, Sergio? Juliana Alazorza. Avoid deleting items twice, just getting the root terms of the taxonomy method. Yeah, there was a recursive method to delete taxonomy that will try to delete the same terms again and again. So this was fixed.
He's a fellow, yeah.
Yeah, good. So it's fixed. I think it's in the dev branch. It's in the dev branch because kind of breaking change, but not critical. Unwrapping of target invocation causes partial stack trace. Yes, this is a fix to a fix. So this piece of code catching a target invocation exception in the shape attribute strategy was patched because on Azure websites there was a site, I don't know who had this issue. There was I could repro. An issue. If an exception of this type was thrown into in Azure, it will shut down the process. So I did a try catch and returned an exception, and this one is just wrapping this exception to have more information.
Sebastian, this shutting down the web process, wasn't that only in cloud services that happened?
Azure websites.
Oh, was it? Okay.
And I never got an answer from them, so I fixed it. I had a repro, and it's fun because the website was up for about 1 year. I just deleted it last week when I cleaned my Azure resources. Blueprint harvesting caching. This is an issue in the layouts when trying to find the elements. There was some, I think again, recursive code which will forget about some elements, and this fix was provided by Carl Woodhouse from patient.info. Talking about patient.info, I have a sad news. So patient.info was the second most used website on Orchard, and it became first since the first is not using Orchard anymore. What was the first?
Was it AMC?
Yep, AMC Theaters.
What?
Like last month they switched. I think they're using some React thing, spa website with React. It's super nice, but it's not using Orchard anymore. That's sad.
Is the backend? Do you know if the backend's using Orchard?
I don't know. I don't know. Maybe
It might be that they put over.
Well, I won't try to jump into conclusions. I know they don't appear as Orchard anymore. I sent an email to what was his name? I can't remember. I sent an email to the guy who was in that. I didn't get an answer. We'll see. Maybe they were watching the video still. They're using Orchard. I don't know. Yep. So they are not on the first. Yeah, that would be good to know if they are using Orchard as a backend or not. That would be good. But I'm not sure, so I'm not saying that. Just to mention it. Flushing tasks deletion. I don't like this code, but apparently there is an issue here if you don't do that. Siaman created a PR, he explained the issue. I can't remember what the issue was. Let me see. This is not the issue. This is a PR. Orchard. Schedule tasks. Apparently, if there is too much load on the schedule task, there will be some issues, deadlocks. So it needs to flush. So I don't really like to call flush because it should be automatic, but we do have to do it sometimes. We do have to do it some, for instance, in the recipes when we need to query stuff which has been committed right before. We need to flush the queries, and apparently in this case it prevents a lock also. This is fine if it's not some common used code path. For instance, in this case it's a background task, unscheduled task, so that's safer than doing it on every request. Adding feature dependencies to OpenId module. Yep, just a little fix here, adding the correct dependencies. And I think there is a big PR coming from Thayer about OpenID, fixing some stuff and adding some return URL support. We'll do that on Thursday. Andy is someone who have been using this module a lot and found some issues and provided some feedback also. So that's good that the module is used. Fixing redirect on tenants with URL prefix. So this one, probably yes. Yeah, maybe some redirections with the tenant URL which was lost. I looked at the PR, it was okay. MediaLibrary fixing that removing TitlePart. Oh yes, this one we talked about a few weeks ago. Also, so instead of adding the TitlePart manually to a media, now it's using a filter, an Orchard filter, a part filter, to activate the TitlePart automatically on the content types which have the MediaPart thing. So by attaching a MediaPart to a content type, then you get automatically the TitlePart, whatever you do. You don't have to add it manually, and even if you add it, it will be added. That's fine. So that's good. This is MediaPart. I thought about it actually in Orchard 2 also. Core. We could even be based on the stereotype to add those parts, even MediaPart. Like if you create a type with a stereotype media, then you will get MediaPart and the rest. But it's open. We can do that if we want, but we don't have to. Well, attaching them statically like this, like at HTML MediaPart, has an advantage over the filter. It's that you can edit the properties. of this part, the settings for this part to this type. Otherwise, you don't see the settings. This one from Lambic, removing something that you don't need. So GetRoutes, you can already just access the routes property inherently. So just simplifying the creation of routes, and it's not breaking. It's just the way we have a route provider. We need 2 steps, but that's okay. Automatic. So I think it's Zoltan, because I've seen his commits or his comments or closing on the. I think so. It looks like, is he here? Maybe not. Maybe just MediaLibrary.
Yeah, the MediaLibrary one was me, and the other commit.
Okay. So it looks like someone is looking at all the issues one by one, and I don't know what you're doing, but trying to fix them or close them if they have been fixed already. So this one, automatically adding, we already talked about it. It's different.
Yes, so the first one was dynamically adding TitlePart if it has MediaPart. And the other one is dynamically adding MediaPart if the type requires MediaPart.
What does it mean if the type requires MediaPart?
So, for example, if it's the audio content type or image content type, then you need MediaPart as well, because, for example, image part depends on MediaPart.
Oh, okay. So if you have a specific part, then it will also add the MediaPart. Okay, I see.
Yeah.
Okay, so now you just need to trigger image part, which itself will trigger MediaPart, which itself will trigger TitlePart. Did you try that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay, and you manage that with events like this. Okay, good. That's it for 01.
I was wondering, is it an idea to be able to codify dependencies between parts?
We don't need that. We can just use handlers to do that. I don't think so. It's a good idea to have that as a first-class scenario when it's easy to just do that.
So I couldn't see your screen while you were scrolling here, but so how does it work with events?
So in this case, is catching the way that from the UI you are adding a part, and if this, you see on content part attached, and when you're adding a part, if it's one of the known media parts, it will also add by itself the media part, because you need it.
Okay. Yeah, well, that's good then. And then it works even if you do it from a migration or a recipe?
Nope, but because here it's an event called content part attached, so it's not the case it's just a UI thing. It's just a helper from the UI, like it will check the box for you somehow if you check it.
Mm-hmm.
That's okay. That's what we do also for command part. We add it automatically when you create a type. It's not part of the recipe. Recipe is more low level, and this way you can do whatever you want. I don't know. I'm fine with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
But if this event system is if it's on the content definition level, shouldn't it also be invoked when you do this from a recipe?
Well, you say it's content definition level. I say it's only triggered from the UI, so I think it's only triggered for the UI.
So we have handlers that are kind of semantically defined on the content definition level, but they're only triggered by UI level changes? I think that sounds strange. Should be the same if they're triggered from a migration or a recipe.
Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. Content definition event handler. Let's see. Content definition step is requiring it, so I assume it's also doing that.
Yeah.
Let's see. Content type imported. Content, yeah, it's doing it when you import a part. But there are the events imported, so no, it's not the case. You can do it also on the recipes with the import if you want, but it's not doing it unless we then have alter part definition, which will do that. Let's see. Content definition manager. And we have event handlers. No, it's not doing it on the event handlers. So these events are only triggered from the UI.
So it's like triggered from that controller directly?
Probably, yeah.
Okay, I think that's wrong.
Well, I could say that by design, these events are just there to reflect what the user is doing on the types. But I don't say that we could not have something that is more code level and will happen every time, like when you add a part, yeah.
Yeah, because the whole point of a recipe is to automate the things that you would otherwise do through the UI. So.
Yeah. I see this UI, the code that they wrote, a helper for the UI. It's just a helper for the UI. So you can still do the same thing from the recipe. You just have to know that you need to add all these parts. Here it will just, like the command part, if you create a type from the UI, you will get the command part. It will be checked for you by default because we know you need that every time you create a type. But from the recipe and from code, you have to do it, how do you say, imperatively.
Yeah, you have to be aware of that dependency yourself and code it into the recipe, you mean?
Yeah, that's a design decision. We can change it, but I don't see it as an issue right now.
So, okay, so in a recipe I can understand it, because if you export, a recipe is usually created by an export, and then you would get all the dependencies anyway. But let's say you call it from a migration, just call the content alter part definition or type definition from a migration. Imperative,
you have to do it by yourself. I kind of like that it's specific what you said, it will be done this way. You are the coder, you say do that, it does this. For me, it's solved by documentation. If you want to, this stereotype needs this part, and this part.
It's just so unnecessary. Sure, you could solve it with documentation and by making people aware of which exact parts are dependent on which other parts. But why? When we have this abstraction of events, seems to me they could just as well be called in both scenarios.
Yeah, I'm not even sure you can. Well, you can always detect that a part has been added because you can do the delta and yeah.
Anyway, it's a longer discussion. I didn't mean to hijack the meeting with this.
Okay. The meeting is a hijack. It's about it's alive. We decide what we talk about. So that's fine.
Yeah, that's true.
Yep. So this Orchard 2. Fetch because I'm not up to the. Oh, I will go on the other screen. Which is it. So we have lots of freebase, so that will pollute the change. 7 days. It was csproj. I talked about it last week. There is a branch with the Visual Studio 2017 upgrade. It doesn't work. If anyone wants to look at why it doesn't work, feel free. It's just dynamic loading of the module that doesn't work. Nothing works, but the issue is in loading the modules.
So I'd like to try it actually, but maybe you can clarify one thing. So they released an RC3 or a third update to the RC, and then a couple of days later there was a blog post that now we've released the updated tooling for .NET Core and so forth. But I didn't get whether How do you get those separately, or were those actually
No.
part of the Aussie 3 release?
So the nice thing is, so this is the icon for 2017. The nice thing is that you have something called the installer. So when you download Visual Studio, you actually download the installer. Let me show you.
Yep, yeah, I've ran that, but it doesn't tell me about any updates to the components.
Oh, I don't want to learn. And then you have, well, I know that you have, oh, the updates for the components, I don't know how you get them. I reinstalled completely. What I know is how to get them in the first place, not the updates. I know how to get the updates. But
Right,
usually
yeah.
the installer should give you the updates too.
Mm-hmm.
I can ask, if I have a specific question, I can ask. They are just literally on the other side of the hallway I'm in right now. So I can ask if you.
That'd be great, yeah.
So if you have a specific question, so how to get the updates of the tooling for the net, that's what you said?
Yeah, exactly. Because when you run the installer, it only seems to do anything if there's an update to Visual Studio itself.
Okay, I will ask. Yeah, otherwise, if you want to get the tooling, for those who haven't tried, when you download Visual Studio Installer, there are lots of options to define what's your environment, and you can decide to install ASP.NET, the old one, or .NET Core development, or Windows app development, or I don't know, Office development, and you check everything you need, and it will install all the packages. Because Visual Studio now is based on packages. So the packages are like NuGet packages in a different folder than the installation of the setup of Visual Studio. Everything is a module, and you can decide what you want and pay for play. So yeah, all the projects have been upgraded, but it still doesn't work. We'll have to do it soon. This is layers-bkp. This is a branch for layers, taking the feedback into account, and it was merged. I will show you. Implementing layers. This is same thing. 6 days ago. What is that? Niklas on his branch about refactoring everything into a module. So MVC is a module, Nancy is a module. Still working on that. This is Sergio, and he will show us. So Sergio has been working on Auth 2 and doing some new features to support changing the settings with a restart button, a new restart button to restart the tenant. Without having to enable or disable a feature, just click restart tenant. This is Nick's branch, which has been rebased. Same thing from Sergio. This is a MySql branch, I will show you. We merged the layers branch, which contains the widgets in layers that I showed last week. It has been approved by Antoine. I fixed all the bugs. It also contains, so the layers branch contains 3 features, and they have been merged in master now. The flow to edit your content item with widgets, the widgets list part to add widgets in layout zone from your content item, and the layers module, which is like the widgets in Orchard 1. You create layers and rules, and you can display widgets across pages. So that's it. And now it's in master.
Was it hard on the SQL stuff to get the Postgres support working?
So this is what I will talk about now.
Sorry.
People don't know, but it's there. So I created this branch because the history of this thing is that after Tuesday, and I showed the layer and I fixed some things, and I'm like, okay, let's start something. So I started the design of the media, but I knew it would take some time to design the media and get some feedback. So I like, okay, what could I do? And 2 days before, someone created a PR on YesSQL. YesSQL, the framework we're using to talk to the databases. And this PR from, who's this guy? Trustman. Trustman, does he have a real name? I'm sure he has. Pavel Pavlov. Created a PR on SQL to add support for MySql. Okay, and I gave some feedback, and we waited. We had some work to do, so I gave some feedback to actually do it even better because there were some limitations. And I'm like, okay, let's do that. I will fix this PR and merge it so we have MySql support in SQL. So I worked on that. And it was a pain because not just that, but the MySQL connector had issues with some types. So I also created a PR in MySQL connector. It has been merged an hour ago. Okay, support for datetime offset, because MySQL connector was throwing an exception whenever we were using a datetime offset. And guess what? In Orchard, we use a lot of datetime offset, so it could not work with MySQL. So I could not have all the tests pass for the MySQL branch until we had that. Or at least what I did is that I removed all the tests with datetime offset for some time. So I made MySQL work on SQL and then work on Orchard. It took a few days, but it worked. So now, when you go to Orchard on the setup, you see here, but I will explain it further. Oh, it doesn't run, sorry. And this one, start. It will be quick because it's already built. Well, I'm doing Skype also, so it's slower than usual. So this is a default SQL Server 1. If I go to admin and I go to tenants and I create a new tenant, I will call it, for instance, MySQL. Let's see if it works. Create. I created a tenant called MySQL. If I go on the setup screen, I call it MySQL. Here now I can select, you see, MySQL, but also Sqlite and Postgre, but I will explain you how I did that. MySQL, table prefix meet01, connection string is this one. Not sure it will work because it's a Docker machine I have running locally, and sometimes I have to restart it, I don't know why, but finish. It works, okay? This is MySQL. So now SQL works on MySQL, and this is a full recipe, and everything is beautiful, okay? And I could even prove it to you by doing docker ps. You see, this is the MySQL service I'm using here, running for the 5 last days. So this works. Then I'm like, yeah, good job, we have MySQL working. I was very proud. And then, exactly 1 hour after I push MySQL branch working on Orchard, there's a guy. So I'm going back on SQL. This is crazy. The story of this thing is crazy. Well, I find it crazy personally. So there's a guy who opens an issue, like you see 4 days ago, like 1 hour after even less than 1 hour, he creates an issue saying, I'm having an issue with Sqlite, blah, 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 doesn't support nested transaction. And yes, I've never been able to have Sqlite work with Orchard actually. Yes, SQL test will pass, but I had bugs in Orchard that show the same issue, so nested transaction, whatever. And he's opening the issue and saying, okay, so can you just support SQL C? And then I explained, no, we can't support SQL C because it doesn't work on the .NET Core. And I'm like, okay, I need to see what's happening with Sqlite. And I knew that by implementing MySQL, I had seen some issues with the in-memory engine and so on that will show the same issues as Sqlite. So I tried to run the same test on Sqlite and I found some bugs. And then after a few hours, I made Sqlite to work on SQL with all the new tests that I had to do with MySQL. And I tried it on Orchard and it worked. It was beautiful. So now when you go design tenants, I'm creating a new tenant. Sqlite. Go on the setup. Sqlite. Log. I can choose Sqlite. There is no conventional string to type because it's hard-coded on a file in the app data. I don't need a table prefix because one file per database. Admin. Setup. Boom, Sqlite. And I can show you, if I go to the sites Sqlite, this is a file with a DB. So this is great because now to create new tenants to test Orchard, we don't have to set up a database in SQL Server or anything. We can just use Sqlite like we do SQL C in Orchard 1. So that's great for testing. Even on the CI, it will be much better, much easier. Or to back up the database, and also SQLite works on Linux, so you don't need to set up anything to run Orchard on Linux. That's great. And Nick is like, hey dude, PostgreSQL, because people on Linux care about PostgreSQL. I'm like, okay, it's Friday, I have nothing to do. Yes, I have things to do, but okay, let's try. So I did the thing in Postgre. I found also some bugs in the Postgre connector, but I went around it. Very weird thing, but I went around it and made the thing work on SQL. It took me the full Saturday because I've like Friday wasn't sufficient to make Postgre work. I took the full Saturday. My wife hates me, but it works now, so I'm proud. Don't care. And now you see, I set it up this morning again using a Docker machine locally. So if you go to Postgre, this is one setup with Postgre. Oops. Oh, without this, I made. And this works too. So, job done. We support SQL Server, SQLite, MySql, PostgreSQL. What else? It's even better than Orchard 1. No, we don't have all this support for Orchard 1 actually. And passing the blog recipe is the most complex one. So it's a full recipe, creating lots of things, types, menu. So it's great. Everything works so far perfectly. Until we find some issues, we'll find some, but at least we have that. So that's the story of Postgres support.
Postgres is really good though. That'll be so good for when if someone says, "Oh, I want to run on a Mac" or "I want to run on Linux," then
like SQLite, like MySql.
Yeah, but if you don't want to use SQLite,
and if you want to use SQL Server on Linux, you can too.
Absolutely, but now because most Linuxy people like Postgres, right? So
yeah, that's good. That's good. So it works. So the only drawback is that SQLite is a set of binary DLLs that have to be referenced by the csproj, and that's done on the PR, so that the PR could be merged. The only thing I'm waiting now is the PR that was merged on MySql. Now it's fixed, doesn't throw an exception anymore. I can go back to datetime offset. I removed the datetime offset from Orchard to make the MySql work, but now it's been fixed. We can go back on datetime offset. And by the way, I tweeted about it. If anyone wants to chat about it, I'm fine. All the people who said, yeah, let's use datetime, and I will point to Nick because Nick was one of them. Datetime offset is great. We need to use datetime offset. Don't use datetime. It's bullshit. Datetime offset is better. Yes, sure. As long as you don't have to persist anything in the database. At that point, it's exactly the same issues from datetime offset to datetime. You have to remove the time zone and normalize it to a known time zone like UTC. So datetime versus datetime offset when you do database is the same thing. You lose the same issue, the same time zone. So it's useless to use datetime offset if you have to serialize them in database. That's it.
But you're not going to be okay.
That's it.
I was going to ask, why do we need datetime offset at all if we store everything in UTC?
Yes, that's what I said. And when we went to datetime offset, I'm like, if it's the same, let's use datetime offset. I don't care that it supports more things. Maybe later we'll use these features. So let's go to datetime offset. So I didn't care about arguing about datetime versus datetime offset. I was fine. It was working good. We'll see. But yes, because we have to, it's not because of us, it's because of databases themselves. SQL Server supports datetime offset, and that's fine. So we could have any time zone stored with the DB. But all the other databases, they don't support it. They just support datetime. So we have, because of the other databases than SQL Server, we have to normalize it. That's the issue.
If you have code in place that does that normalization to UTC on the way in and on the way out of the database, then datetime offset is useless, I think.
Correct.
And we do, so.
And we do. But I don't know.
Well, the thing about datetime offset is that I kind of want to move away from having our own clock and use the implementation that's in .NET, which uses datetime offset.
Okay, datetime offset dot to universal date, and you get a date.
Yeah, but we can use that further down. We can use that deeper inside of Orchard and still keep the clock as datetime offset.
Well, the clock is datetime offset, and we can keep it. That's fine. Yeah, that's
Yeah. Okay, fine, good.
So yeah, and maybe we still want to use datetime offset because our POCOs maybe will be used in the views and in the controllers, and then we'll make use of that because for some reasons, and keep saving it at datetime in database. That's also fine. So we'll see. So everything works. Then Sergio.
I'll start. You can see. Okay. Well, first of all, I don't like to use a PowerPoint because a demo has to be something quick. But we agreed with Sebastian that maybe we have to provide a kind of introduction to OpenID concepts. I mean, because if no, I'm going to show you screens with settings that if it's not clear for everybody. So that's why I use it a PowerPoint. Okay, I'm going to go more quickly than not reading everything. Well, first of all, this model was started in August of 2016. And at that time, was available Thinkature Identity Server version 3 that was not built with ASP.NET Core in mind. And what's true is on October 2016 appeared the first beta of this identity server library and host table component, but is still in early stages. Okay, the alternative I found was OpenId. This is a library that makes very easy to implement OpenID on OAuth 2 in your software, and the point was that it from the beginning started as a fork from Katana and uses same event models as OpenID client middleware by Microsoft, and is fully integrated with ASP.NET Core, so has the same degree of flexibility. That's why I choose that one. In fact, its first beta was published in 2050, so it is a more mature piece of code. Okay, well, what the model is offering, the Orchard OpenID model is offering is it provides the store implementations that OpenID needs that stores for users, roles, applications, and tokens. Okay. Also, this model adds claims based on Orchard permissions for users authenticated or apps are authenticated, because we will see that we can register, we can log with an app without any user related. Okay. And in general, through this model, you can get the flexibility of OpenID, but without coding, all through admin user interface. Also, OpenID allows to configure your app at app level, I mean, but with this model, you also can configure for each client app which flows do you want to support. Okay. And well, in general, the interface tries to avoid you can set wrong configurations and give you tips to avoid the problems I had, because I don't mention it, but I'm a newbie on OpenID things, and I have had many problems that I try to solve to people that use this model, giving them tips of how they have to do requests. Okay, more context we need to understand what we will see in the demo is in OpenID we have to differentiate two kinds of clients: confidential clients and public clients. Confidential ones are those capable of maintaining confidentiality of their credentials. Okay, that's like a web app, for example, a regular web app, MVC web app, that don't need, when this app wants to connect to a third-party OpenID server, the credentials doesn't need to share with the user agent. Are there and they are safe. Okay, and a public app is, for example, an SPA application or an application in a mobile device. In general, any native application, because you are not sure if someone can manipulate it to get that credentials. Okay, tokens. We have three kinds of tokens. Identity tokens, that are tokens that have the information of permissions that a user has and have information of the user itself, and is consumed by the client application to know more about the client and act in consequence. Access token is a token consumed by the resource server. The authorization server gives you an access token, and with that access token, you can ask resources to resource server. Okay, and refresh token is a token that you use when access token has expired. You can use a refresh token that you get when you get the access token. Also, you can ask for refresh token. Well, then you can say, give me another access token with that refresh token. You can go in a loop, asking new access tokens when they expire. Okay. Another relevant issue is OpenId allow us to use a JWT token. That is the standard one. It's not encrypted. And using this kind of token, the limitation we have is if the certificate for SSL we are using is not trusted in the client, it will fail. It doesn't accept. This is the default behavior. We can change it if we want, but it's not recommendable. An alternate to that is to use an encrypted token that also relies on SSL, but also encrypts the token using a standard data protection stack of ASP.NET Core. Okay. The point is, this type of token doesn't need a trusted certificate for SSL. There are situations where you are not interested in having this trusted certificate, and you auto-generate your own certificate. In that way, you don't need to install that certificate as trusted in the client. Okay. Well, for configuring OpenID, you have to know their endpoints. There are two relevant endpoints. The authorization endpoint that is used to talk between the end user and the authorization server without the intervention of the client app. And there the end users provides credentials, and then the logic is redirected to the client app, providing the token or a code to continue with the flow. It depends on the flow you configure. Okay, token endpoint is where the client app requests the tokens it needs. Okay, so the important thing here is when a flow uses authorization endpoint, the end user will talk directly with the authorization server. Okay, and two extra endpoints are the logout endpoint. It's plain itself, and user info endpoint, that is if you want to get more info about a user. We won't see that in the demo. Okay, let's see the different flows. The authorization call flow is recommended for clients that can securely maintain a secret between themselves and the authorization server. The example I told you before, the web app consuming data in our web API on behalf of an end user. We are Orchard acting as as an authorization server. Okay, and the client is the web app. Okay, this flow sends the client, sends the end users to the authorization server through the authorization endpoint to authenticate, and after that it gets a code that allows the client app to get the access token, the identity token, and whatever it needs. Okay. The benefits: we don't expose any user credential to the web app and not expose any tokens to the user agent. As we have seen, we use the two endpoints, the authorization endpoint and the token endpoint. In the first phase, authorization endpoint, and the second, the token endpoint. And an important thing, it allows long life tokens because it allows refresh flow. That means that you can ask the client, the end user, the credentials one time, and after that moment you can get a refresh token, and you never will need to request it to him another time unless the refresh token gets updated. But usually you do things to avoid that. Implicit flow is a variation of previous one, but is for clients that cannot maintain a client secret. Okay, the example is SPA app or a native app. Okay, what we do with this flow, we reduce security because we don't ask for a client secret for initiate the flow, but we don't need to store anything in the app. Okay, and in that case, the flow is redirected to the authorization server also, and when user inputs client credentials, return directly the access token and the identity token. So there are less steps, and well, the benefits of that is we continue not exposing any user credential to the SPA application, and we avoid storing client secret on a public app. Okay. Problem of this one is it doesn't allow long life tokens. So, well, if we use this kind of flow for our chat, for example, for SPA modules, well, this is not a problem because it's similar to the session lifetime that after a while you lose this. It gets outdated, and there is not any problem. We will need to set this time, this lifetime, to a number, a correct number. Okay, sorry. Hybrid flow. Okay, this flow is a mix of previous two. This flow means that you can use any of the two options. You have an app that has SPA components, but also it's a web app, MVC web app. Well, then you are identified to the authorization server as the same app, and you use the flow you prefer, depending on the scenario, if you are in the SPA application or in the MVC application. Okay. This one allows refresh flow. Okay. Now the last two flows doesn't redirect communication between end user and the authorization flow. That can be seen because they only use token endpoint. Okay. How they does this? Okay. The resource owner password credential, what does is he asks to the user the credentials. Okay. When you are going to do that? when you trust in the code is going to ask credentials to the user. Okay, you have to trust on that code. And the flow is very simple. You get the credentials and you provide these credentials to the authorization server, and it returns you the access token. Okay, simplifies the authorization. It doesn't need to store user and password credentials if you use reflex flow, because it's a bit dangerous, because if you don't use without reflex flow, you are storing the secret, the client secret, and also the username and password of a user. So if you use that one, the recommended is to use a reflex flow and don't store anything. Only ask just for the moment you are going to get the reflex flow. And last one is client credentials flow. That this flow is acting on its own behalf instead of on end user behalf. So instead of having permissions for a user, you have permissions for an app. Okay, and that's the point. The benefits: you don't need to assign a user to an app that doesn't act on behalf of an end user. But the problem is it doesn't allow reflex flow. So you need to store client ID and client secret on the client side. Okay. Reflex token flow is what I explained to you before. And well, where use cases for OrChat OpenID module? Well, we can use for OrChat SPA components with authorization needs. We should register by default in OrChat as we should register OrChat by default as a public app. I think that based on implicit flow, it will be the most recommendable. And with an option I added that is skip consent, because when you register, when you log in with authorization server, it shows you a page for asking consent to the end user. But when the result of the server is the same of the authorization server, I think this doesn't have any sense. And we should use this option. Other use case is delegating authentication. Okay, delegating authentication is well, we have a third-party app that will delegate the authorization in OrChat with this module activated. It's as simple as setting in audiences the domain of the third-party app and add meaningful permissions claims to OrChat, that meaningful permissions for that third-party app, and we can have here delegated authentication. And last use case is use OrChat as a single sign-on provider. It's similar to previous one, but instead of use one domain in audiences, we can use a set of audiences. So it means that the tokens issued by OrChat are valid for those domains. And that's it.
Wait.
Yeah.
It was the only useful slide. Why did you go so fast on this one? What can you do with it?
Because I want to. The important is the demo, so I want to show you the demo.
Okay.
And at the end we can talk about that one. Okay. Settings. Okay. Here in settings, I don't know why this appears in that way, but it's not important now. We have here the general settings. When these settings allow us first to say if we want to enable testing mode or not. And testing mode means that it's not required HTTPS, and we don't need to configure a certificate. Okay, if we disable that, we will need. If I save, he will say it needs this is HTTPS, and now I need to choose a certificate. From here, you can look for the certificate you want, okay? For the demo, I'm going to put this in testing mode. Okay, this is the token format I talked to you previously. Well, nothing more to explain. Authority, this is the authorization server, the domain of the authorization server, so this machine. And audiences is what I told you. We can put as much domains as we want to provide tokens that are valid for those audiences. Okay, what else? Another thing, endpoints. Here, as I mentioned you, we can choose the endpoints. One moment, let's see. Here there is a bug. I don't know which moment will appear, but I found it before the presentation. But the point is, when you choose an endpoint, it shows you only the flows that that support using only that endpoint. It helps user to don't configure things that are wrong. Okay. If I put enable authorization endpoint, I only see the only flow that can be used only using that endpoint. With both, I can use both. Okay.
Shouldn't it be the opposite? That you select flows that you want to enable, and then it will allow specific endpoints based on the flow that you want to support?
Okay.
I'm just asking a question. It looks more... Because here you're saying, oh, I will enable some endpoints, and based on the ones I enabled, you can decide which flows you want to use. That's the opposite. What flows do you want to use in your app? And then you will disable the endpoints that are not supposed to work.
Yeah, okay.
I think so.
Okay.
But I'm not an expert and I've never done that. I'm just saying as a user.
Maybe I think it's in this way because I understood the importance of enable authorization endpoint or not, and I say, okay.
What's up, everyone? This
I have to be aware that I have enabled authorization endpoint. If I configure first flows, maybe I don't care if it is enabled or not. That's the only point. But I don't have any strong.
Ask
opinion.
Kevin. You will ask Kevin what he thinks.
Okay, we can. That's an important thing I want to tell in the presentation. For this module, I have received a lot of help from the author of OpenId, that is Kevin Chalet, and he is
Kevin Chalet is French. Please use his French name, Kevin Chalet.
Okay, but he has made he has made a lot of PRs and reviews, and very well. And what else? My mouse. I lost my mouse. I don't see my mouse. Oh, ¿qué pasó?
¿Qué pasó? ¿Qué pasó?
I don't see my mouse. Well, I have a problem. I don't know. Wow.
Unplug it and plug it again. Unplug it and plug it again.
I'm using touchpad. One moment, I will try something like that. No, this is no, this is not that. Oh my God. No. One moment. ¿Tienes un ratón? Okay. Let's see now. No. Ah, okay. Here's it. Okay, perfect. Well, let's continue. Now we're talking endpoint. Okay. Well, for the one moment. Allow authorization code flow. I'm going to save settings. When I save settings, we receive a warning that we need to restart the site because general settings are loaded at the startup of the module. To restart, I have appeared with this code that is, when you click here, just in a second, you have your tenant restart. And now, if I go to content, OpenID connect apps, there I can add the apps I need. Okay, let's add one. One thing I want to show you. Oh no. Oh, well. One thing is not happening, but should happen, is here I should only see only the flows I enabled a general configuration. But I'm having problems with collapse of Bootstrap, and well, that's the problem. I thought I fixed it, but all this afternoon I haven't been able to fix it. Okay, let's go back. Okay. Okay. Here we have a test app. Well, type confidential. Okay. For the app, you have to write the ID, the display name. The ID is what you will need to use in the request. You choose if it's a public or a confidential app. What changes when you do that? Well, if I put public, well, for each flow here, for each flow you selected, here you have a tip telling you what you have to use as parameter in your request. For example, if I put public, I see here client ID, but not client secret. If I put confidential, I here see that I have to use the client secret. Okay. Here you see also the grant type, what you have to use, the resource that you have configured and general options, and the scopes. OpenID, this is mandatory to work. Profile, this is needed also if you want that when Orchard receives, a web API in Orchard receives a request, to know which is the user login. And if you use roles, also you will have attached the roles to that user. And the same with offline access is for use refresh token. It allows you to get a refresh token also with the access token. When you unselect that, you don't have offline here. Okay. That's the help for the end user. Well, that's the help for the developer that doesn't know too much about OpenID like me. Okay, and in general, this is how it works. Now, I think okay, another thing. Yes, if I enable client credential flow, then I can choose which roles will be used when the app logs in, because with that flow you don't need to provide an user credential. Okay, and that's it. Also, redirect URI are only needed for flows that use authorization flow. If I remove them, it will disappear. You don't need to provide that. Okay. In that case, how the tests are going to be done with Postman. Here I have the repository of Postman. Okay. And here is it the flag I told you before. When we are using OpenID module for authenticate Orchard SPM models in our chat, it's recommendable we use skip user consent. Okay, and that's it. Let's see. I have here Postman. Okay, and well, I can start with, for example, WebAPI, refresh flow. This was. I'm going to start with call the flow. With Postman, you give the token a name. You provide the token, the end token for authorization. This is one. This is the authorization URL. The same for the token. A client ID. This is the ID of the app. The client secret, because I have configured this as a confidential app. Yes. If I configure it as public, I don't need to use client secret. I can delete it. Okay. Okay, great. Offline scope is not allowed. Okay. I don't know if I... okay. Refresh token flow is not allowed. That's why I use it that tips, because you get crazy. Sometimes some errors are not as clear as this one, and you get crazy. Okay, I got the token. This is the token. Let's try another time with a more... because I haven't received it. I haven't been redirected to provide credentials because I'm logged in. One moment. I think I have to go out from Chrome. I'm not sure. One moment. Remove skip user consent. Okay, I have to close. I have to close Chrome because it is authenticated. This is Chrome, no? Yeah. And Postman uses Chrome. Okay. I don't know why I cannot do. I'm going to continue. I don't know why now he don't ask me user and password. It shows me that screen because I'm validated, but I don't know. Let me continue. I'm going to get the token. Yes. Okay, and I'm going to access to the web API. Headers.
Can we see the code of this web API?
Yeah.
Oh, no. Yeah, yes, this is a custom web API.
Well, it doesn't work. Well, perfect. Maybe it's from related with the configuration. Orchard. Search a demo. Oh. It's not arriving here. I'm doing something. I'm doing something wrong. Well, it's. I'm going to try with another flow. Well, this works. I don't know what happens with the other. I have sometimes problems with that one.
So how do you protect your API here? You just say authorize attribute. Yeah. That's the only thing you need.
Yeah, that's it. You can observe that I have it in the class and at the action level. I remember that Netcore have some problems with this tag and with ignore anti-forgery token, and by the moment we have to do in that way. But I received notification that they are working just now in that. And well.
And then you can use the authorization service, use a permission from Orchard, which will check the role that you assign to your app.
Yeah, that's it. If you want, I can try with. I've used password flow, but I can use.
That's okay. I think this is the important part. That the goal is to protect your APIs and to provide some ways to authenticate using the different client flows. And it's transparent for you. Just enable the module, configure which flows you enable, and from your client you use the flow as you will use, as you will do, and then it will be protected. Okay.
Well, next part of the demo is trying the other. For example, with refresh token.
You have 5 minutes max.
No, if you have enough with that, I think next is only show that it works. But okay, refresh flow. Well, in password flow, I received the access token and also the refresh token. Then I can copy the refresh token. As I told you, it has an expiration, the access token. When it expires, the only way to continue talking with that web API without asking credentials another time is use the refresh token. You use refresh token, saying in that type that is a refresh token, and here you put the refresh token. How we are selling, we told that we are using, no, that this is a confidential app. We need to provide the client ID and client secret. If we say this is public, we don't need. In fact, if we provide, it gives an error. And let's see if it works. Well, I can show you invalid ground, invalid ticket. Wow, this work. This is working in a in a product where
copy paste issues. You never know. Configuration. That's fine. That's okay. Good. It's late.
Okay. Well, okay. Then
not for me, but for everyone else.
Yeah, for everyone else, I understand.
And literally everyone else, because everyone else but one is from Europe. So.
Okay. Well, that's it.
Okay. Thank you, Sergio.
Okay.
Send the slide. Let me see. Can I share the slides?
Yeah, you can.
Yeah, I'm just thinking where, but we have the video. But I'm interested in watching the slides still to see what you wrote. Good, thanks.
Okay.
Questions?
Is there someone there because it's very late?
We lost half of everyone, but because it's late. That's all. Okay, good. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, thanks everyone. See you on Thursday.